Kelly was talking about sound mind, I was kind of like hesitant to say amen and amen. It depends who you're talking to. Which opinion are you going to listen to, right? Father God, I give you all the glory for everything. Holy Spirit, have your way. Touch our hearts, our minds, touch our bodies. I pray, Father, that this whole ordeal, this craziness, this journey, this roller coaster, up and down, will be, Father, for your glory and for many that would come to know you, that there is hope. Even in the middle of darkness, there is light. You are that light. Amen. Well, there's so much to cover, but first thing I want to do, I want to thank you all for standing with us, for standing for the Lord, for standing for the truth. So I want to say a big thank you to every one of you. For those that were coming outside at the Riemann, for those that were phoning the authorities and sending emails, putting pressure on the corruption, bringing the light into this enormous overreach. I mean, I would never imagine that we would one day come into a realization that our elected officials would be so corrupted that pretty much every time they open their mouth is a lie chasing a lie. I would never imagine that I would have to relive communism. In the first place, in 1989, when my father and my mother, they decided it's time to go. The abuse of power was so enormous, and they just wanted to have a better life for us. You see, they didn't do it for them. They did it for us, for the children. A good father, a good mother wants to pass something good, something beautiful, freedom to their children, and that's what they wanted. They were sick and tired of lies. And they took us to Greece, and we had to wait over 5 years in Greece to finally sign the papers and emigrate to the freest country, Canada. The milk and honey, the freedom. I remember at the embassy, the officer would talk to us and he said, in Canada, no one will ever persecute you for your faith. In Canada is the freest country on earth, is the best country on earth. Sell everything you have. We had a very successful business in Greece. Sell everything you have and bring your money to Canada and build your life here. There's nothing like Canada. We had offers to go to other nations. Actually, nations that were offering us a lot more money. But we've chosen Canada for freedom. So when the freedom was being taken slowly away from us, the first thing I decided to do is fight for what's rightfully mine. How dare they come and steal what's ours? Who they think they are? Like, excuse me, Mr. Premier, who do you think you are? Or Mr. Mayor, who do you think you are? Or the Chief of Police? You are commanded to uphold the law. You are commanded to stand for the rights of the very people that elected you in the first place. But we've lost them. And I know, I understand that many people were thinking I'm crazy. Many people said that your use of language is just over the top. I understand that for Canadian ears, my rhetorics was a little bit too much. I get that, I understand that. But you see, you have not lived through what I lived through. So you do not understand that what we are witnessing right now is just a simple repetition of history. So when I started to use the language, I wanted to shake the Canadians out of their horses. To do everything I could with my broken English and the use of words to get your attention. To let you know, listen, I've seen it before. I've seen this movie before. It does not end well. We have to change the script. We have to. If we don't do it, you're going to suffer. And look at us now today. Canadians are suffering. Canadian children are suffering. And they're not suffering because this nation is not great. This is one of the best places on earth. Canada is beautiful. From the thousands of lakes to the Rocky Mountains and to the seas, from sea to sea, God had a dominion over this country. It's a beautiful, beautiful nation. With lots of beautiful people. Not all are beautiful. I've met different people too. But it's a beautiful nation. And it's being stolen from us. And it's being stolen from us based on a lie. So I stood against the lie and the hammer came very heavy. But how do you expose corruption? If not by pushing the envelope, rocking the boat, or whatever you want to call it. I've heard it all. The light exposes the darkness, and when the light shows up, there is a fight. The moment you walk into a dark room and you switch that light on, you are making the darkness very uncomfortable, and the darkness has no choice but to go. And the darkness doesn't like it. I want to thank you so much for you being with my family while I was not able to be with them. I want to thank you so much for all the protests. You got no idea what you've done. I don't think you will ever comprehend how much that meant to the inmates. Quite often when I was there, I was being told by them, Art, there is no hope here. We have no hope. And I heard that many times from many people, there's no hope there. You see, we have fancy names, correctional center, right? And when I was there locked, they had this right up on the wall, this is a correctional center, but they're not correcting anything. They're not correcting anything. They're adding fire to the problem. They're putting fuel to a burning house. They're not correcting anything. They are in a business of making criminals. So here's what was happening when, of course, I was over 30 days in solitary confinement. I mean, torture. That's torture. And when finally they would allow me to come out, and I had some time after entire unit send a petition to the director, the wicked evil man. Every person, and they knew there is a revolution in the making, so finally they let us out. They knew there's going to be a trouble. When every inmate is on your board, you know something is about to happen, and they were right to assess that. So they finally let us out. And we could actually spend the time together. There's nothing being done with those boys. There's no social workers. There's no chaplain that would come and conduct church services. I said, why can't we have a church? Like, I mean, what is the reason why the inmates cannot go to church? I thought this is Canada, not China. And if for whatever reason we can't, I send a letter to the director and I said, I can become a chaplain here for the inmates. If for whatever reason we cannot come out, I will do a church service right here in my unit. And they said, we don't need another chaplain. We have our own. So I did send to see the chaplain, and 1 month later, he shows up for a few minutes. A useless conversation about useless things. But I wanted to see him because I wanted to tell this man what is happening to all of us. There's no games, there's no checkers, there's no chess, there's nothing. Even when we were let out of our cells, there was nothing to do. No one cares, no one does anything with those boys. So the first conversations I had with them, and I sat down, I didn't know. I mean, I am new in this criminal lifestyle. So I'm learning as I go. Like, I'm not your seasoned criminal, so I don't know the gig. I'm learning as we go. I bet Apostle Paul didn't know how to behave in Rome. He was trying to figure it out with the guards, like, what can I do? Will they hammer me? Will they put me in concrete, which was the case every day? They would snatch me out of my cell and they put me for hours in a tank. Shame. On concrete. I confess, my bum hurt. After almost 2 months, 50 days on hard places all the time. Shame. You know what they were talking about? The inmates? That was my introduction to the criminal world. They were talking about guns and, you know, how to do robberies, how to sell drugs, how, you know, and the bullets flying here and there. And we shot this guy, we killed this guy, we did this and we did that. My God, I am in hell. I am in hell. There is nothing positive here. This is absolute craziness. So I started to talk to one person. And he was yelling and screaming. I think he was in hell too. And I'm sitting in my cell and 23, sometimes 25 hours straight, not allowed to come out. You go nuts, especially the first week. And I want to thank you so much for bringing that Bible. Unfortunately, they would not give me my glasses for a week, so I couldn't read. This man brought me paper and pen, and we paid the price for that. I ended up in a metal box for that, suffocating all day. I would not receive drink. And it was so crazy hot over there because for whatever reason their conditioning was broken. And they were fixing it. 40 few days later, it was still not fixed. So when they put me in a metal box, I said, I'm going to die here. They're going to make sure they're going to damage me here for sure. But you see, God had a different plan. So when I heard those inmates talking about guns and drugs and all that crazy stuff, I picked that worst of the worst, the one that was yelling and banging on the door. So I went to him. I said, first of all, I gotta fix the environment. I can't sleep because of this dude, so I'll fix him first. So I had very selfish motives. So I went to him and I said, buddy, what's happening? Like, why are you yelling and screaming? I mean, oh, you know, so he yelled and screamed. But then he saw me, he said, I know you. It's good to be known, even in the crazy words. You know? When I was transferred to Edmonton, I walked into the mental unit. They locked me in a mental unit, and you know, when I walked in, they looked at me and said, "Oh, Pastor Art is here." I am very well known everywhere. And then I sat with this man. And we're talking. He says, "You know, you look familiar." I said, okay, yeah. Like, what do you do? Well, I'm a pastor. Aren't you that one that gets arrested all the time? And this is, remember, in a crazy world. And they say, yeah, guilty as charged. You're my hero! He said, I don't know if that was a good thing or a bad thing when the crazy people are calling you, you're my hero. But you know what? At that moment, I would take anyone. I would receive any positive word from anything. If the chair would say, Art, I like you, I'll take it. When the inmates saw the protests outside, the vigils, I didn't understand at first what kind of an impact you're making. You know, I thought, well, God brought the light inside, but when they started to come to me, one after another, and they would cry, because I was still in solitary, I could not come out, so they were coming to me through the window. And when they were crying and saying, this was the most beautiful thing I've ever seen, and you look at the dude and he's tattooed from the top to the bottom, and if you saw him in the middle of the night, you would run to Edmonton. Some of those dudes muscle, you for sure gangsters, right? They got some stuff on their faces, and I did my best not to even look, because I'll be awakened in the middle of the night. Some are scary looking dudes. And when I saw them crying, I said, like, this is something a lot bigger than I could ever understand, really. One guy tattooed all over his face, slashed like this with a machete. And he comes and he says, I was in solitary still, and he puts his hand on his heart like this and says, Art, what I saw is restoring my humanity. Think about that. It's like I'm thinking, and I didn't do anything yet. So I only calmed down one crazy guy that was banging on the door, and he says, well, I've seen you at street church. He was one of the people that was being fed in front of City Hall. So I calmed him down, and we prayed together. And then what I didn't know is that my conversation with the guy that was banging on the door was overheard by other inmates. And then they came to me when I was locked, when they were allowed to come out, and this Daniel guy comes in and he says, when I heard you talk to this guy, I knew the light has come. The light has come. So I did my best every time I was allowed to come out. So here's how it would look like. 22, 23, 24, 25, you never knew how many hours you have to spend in your cell. But finally, when they would let me out for that 1 hour, I would take a shower, I'd call my wife. Sometimes I had to call a lawyer because for 3 weeks they would not allow me to see a lawyer to discuss what's happening. And then I would go outside of their cells and minister to them. And one by one, they were starting to come around. By the time I was transferred to Edmonton Max, to the Max part, where you put the most dangerous offenders, murderers, those that have started riots, attacked the guards, I had the entire unit at my Bible study and the church services. So God was doing something, but I want to thank you for those times at the vigil, and I could see it when they saw that this has had such a positive impact on me, and of course I was laughing and smiling, and the people were yelling. The whole unit was like, free Pastor Art, free Pastor Art. I was like, cool, we have a revolution going here. So they didn't like that, and they moved me from the cell that I could see you to the opposite cell that I was not able to see. But through my little window, I could see another cell, and there's a little window over there, and then there's another window, so I could see you every day. But I got updates from the inmates every single time you showed up. They would tell me what you were singing, they would tell me what you were talking about. They were so touched, It was so amazing. To be part of a church like this is a great privilege and an honor, so I want to thank you for that.
Thank you, Pastor. Thank you.
I also want to thank publicly my wife. I mean, she stood with me through this whole craziness. And I don't think she was fully aware of what she was praying for when she prayed when she was a little girl that God would give her a priest as a husband. We grew up in communism, so the only way you could get a godly man, a clergyman, there was a priest. But of course, priests cannot marry. But she prayed like this. She says, God, I want to have a husband that is a priest. Well, be careful what you pray for. You might end up with a husband in prison. She stood in the middle of this fire, and without her, I would not be able to go through this ordeal. I mean, desperately need each other. This is not one-man's show. Church is Jesus's show. He is the center. He is the King of Kings and the Lord of Lords. I also want to thank my son. Nathaniel. Nathaniel, you have proven to be your father's son. Wow, what a true lion. 44 days of protest, a vigil to fight for justice, a young hero. God is making heroes these days, a champion that faced the hyenas face to face. I've seen some of the pictures, some of you facing those hyenas face to face, and wow, that's what the church is all about. When you stir down evil, when you stir down darkness, and you say to them, not an inch. We have a greater God than you. Amen. And of course, my brother and his wife, David, I've seen you yelling at them. David took over the mantle of yelling at the wicked. Usually that's my job. But because I was not allowed to do it, David took that mantle on himself and he kept yelling at them. So that's amazing. That's awesome. All the inmates knew who you are. From time to time, when I was able to be at the right time, later they figured it out there was a big mistake. But for a few days I was able to be out when you were out there to see a little bit what was going on. I'll point them. Oh, that's my son, that's my wife, that's David, that's Martha. And then later on they were pointing fingers to others. Oh, that's his brother, you know? That's his father. That was so funny. And Nathaniel said to me, you know, like, they were pointing finger at me wherever I went, like. But that's why. Because I was teaching them this. Yeah. When finally I received my glasses and I was able to read the Bible, I studied that book inside out. And sometimes I was very happy that I did, sometimes I was not so happy, especially when I studied the life of Job. Or, you know, all the difficulties of others that went through hell back and forth. And I'm thinking, like, some of those heroes of old spent years in the hole. And my few weeks, it was nothing in comparison to some of those people, what they went through. And I said, God, wow, I hope that this is not my destiny for this time, you know, 5 years in a hole. But one day I was reading the Bible inside out. That's how I would start my day. I would read the Bible, 7 o'clock, or, you know, we don't have clock, but around that time the lights would come out, the officer would come in, kick a few things. And how did I know who is who? So I would cover my head, and I'll give you a little tips how to survive when the lights are in the cell. You make a little bit covering with your socks, right? And they're black, and that saves you from the crazy light. Well, the problem was that when I tie it, because I had a professional thing I made, one day they took me outside of my cell and they insisted that I would put this stupid gown on me, which is useless. Of course, they said, would you wear a muzzle? And I said, no, I'm not a dog. So I would not, they knew that, but they insisted on that gown, that the crazy stupid thing that is useless. And I thought, all right, I'm not going to fight them on this. And I was glad I didn't, because when they finally locked me in the cell, I chopped that thing to pieces and I made myself a nice covering for my eyes. But those buggers, they came and stolen that from me. Can you imagine? Even little things like this I was not allowed to have because I might harm myself with too much darkness. So I use socks. The problem with the socks is that when you tie them and you're laying, you know, those little things are, you know, going into your head. So later on in the game, you know, I'm a slow learner, I admit. But later on in the game, I find out that underwear is a lot better for me. It nicely fits over your eyes. I bet you look crazy, but at that time I did not care at all. I'm sure when the officer would come in and would see me like covered with the underwear, you know, like this, it was quite a view. But at that moment it's a survival gig and you don't care what's happening as long as you can have a good night's sleep under the circumstances. So that's how I survived. But when I was reading the Bible every morning, of course I was fasting for 14 days first. And I think that was the most challenging thing because there's nothing else to do, especially when you are locked for 22 to 25 hours a day. So food is something that you crave for because it's something to do at least for that time. But I was hurting physically, spiritually, psychologically, you know, all of that on top. So that was very hard. And then my wife, every day the officers would come and would say, so is this a hunger strike? I said, well, I've told you the first day I'm fasting, it's my religious right. But then some higher ups would come and there was like every day pressure. So finally we decided they might move me to a mental ward or try to do some crazy stuff, telling that I went nuts. So she took over the fast and she was fasting for 26 days. And then later on I took the fast again and for I think 7 or 8 days and I was almost passing out. I was feeling dizzy. And so we decided that she will take over until I'm released. But together with my wife, we fasted 50 days. 50 days. So I would read the Bible, then I would meditate, I would pray, I would read something else, I would walk around. I mean, there's not much to do. I would read again. And one day, from the Bible, a page fall. One page, only one day, one time, from the Bible, and here is what it came out of it. 1 Peter 3:8 to 22. And who is he who will harm you if you become followers of what is good, eager to do good? But even if you should suffer for righteousness' sake, suffer for what is right, you are blessed. And I'm telling you, at that moment, I did not feel blessed at all. I mean, can I share this blessing with somebody else? And do not be afraid of their threats, nor be troubled. I had at least 4 inmates coming to me on 4 different occasions that they said to me that the guards, either outside when they were escorting them somewhere or inside, were asking them to beat me up. They said, we'll give you incentives, we'll give you extra time out of your cell if you hurt this guy. Shame. They were afraid to do it themselves. They wanted to use the hands of the inmates. But here is the most remarkable thing. The inmates told them, but he's a priest, he's a clergyman, he's a good man, why would we beat him up? By the time I was transferred to Edmonton, if anyone would lay hands on me, they would beat them up. The inmates were so Here's what happened. When you were outside protesting, they would come to my cell, even though I was locked and I couldn't do anything, and they would take me from my cell and they would escort me to a tank on concrete. And that was the treatment I was receiving every day. And when I was on the way out, the inmates were yelling at the guards, if anything happens to this man, be careful. Because we will go after you. So now imagine the impact that God had. It was unbelievable. And when I was coming out from my treatment on concrete, when I was walking in, the first thing that they were yelling was, "Free Pastor Art! Free Pastor Art! Free Pastor Art!" And I said, calm down, because they'll lock us again. You know, so at that time, at least we had a little bit of time together, you know, and I wanted to use the time after 30-some days of, you know, crazy lockdowns. So do not be afraid of their threats. Do not be frightened. But sanctify the Lord God in your hearts, and always be ready to give a defense, to give the reason. Do we even know why we believe in what we believe? To everyone who asks you a reason for the hope that is in you, with meekness and fear, having a good conscience, keeping a clear conscience, that when they defame you as evildoers, those who revile your good conduct in Christ may be ashamed, that those who speak maliciously against your good behavior in Christ may be ashamed of their slander. And of course, my wife and my family were updating me what Kenny was saying and others, and the mainstream propaganda machinery, those liars. Goebbels would be very proud of today's mainstream Canadian media. They were trained very well by the Chinese spies. What a slander. Do you know that to this day the mainstream media are accusing me of inciting violence? At Quds, even though during my speech 3 times I told them peacefully, no guns, no swords. I told them about solidarity movement. Solidarity movement was a peaceful resistance, civil rights movement style, Mahatma Gandhi, Martin Luther King Jr., Lech Wałęsa style. Peaceful resistance, non-compliance. When I'm talking about shutting down their, you know, their system, I'm not talking about occupying buildings, I'm talking about refusal to work for the villains. We have the power to say to them, no, I'm not going to work for you anymore because you're tyrants. You're slave masters, so we will not work for you. And that's what brought the system down during Solidarity movement. The people simply said, we're not going to obey and we're not going to work for you, peacefully. When I was referring to Alamo, when I said this is our Alamo, I was not talking about shooting back. I was talking about this is a place that we're willing to die for what we believe in. But they are twisting everything. They're manipulators. They're liars. You see, me telling them it's peaceful didn't fit within the narration. So they needed to spin and lie and confuse the people. Liars, manipulators. For it is better, if it is the will of God, to suffer for doing good than for doing evil. And lots of those boys were there for doing evil. They've done terrible things. You see, I spent time with murderers. Spent time with bank robber. Daniel, my deacon, over there that took over the prayer meetings and the church services, he did bank robberies in Winnipeg and in Alberta for years. And he came to my door and I was counseling him and praying. He says, Art, what should I do? I'm guilty. I did it. I want to plead guilty. But they're going to lock me for most of my life. And I said, just pray, pray, pray. And then everything was changed for 6 years combined. And he already spent some time, so he might be out in 2 years. And I said, that's the favor of God in your life. You've done terrible things, true. You want to plead guilty because you've done it. Awesome. But may God's favor be on your life because you have surrendered your entire life into his hands. And that's exactly what happened. He came crying. He says, like, you won't believe what happened. I said, I will. I know. God is a big God. So when I was there, it was not really the physical conditions that was the biggest problem. It was a problem, but with a spiritual oppression. I felt like I am in hell. I felt that the principalities and powers over there are so powerful. You could feel evil. You could feel it. How did I know which guard was a good guy or a bad guy? Well, I am with my wonderful covering. You know, either my underwear or socks. So I could not see them. But you know how I knew who is walking into my room every morning? A good guy would say, "Good morning, Pastor." Or "Good morning, sir." And I would say, "Good morning. How is your day?" "Good, how is yours?" You knew. You know, mine was not very eventful. That's how I knew that this man is a good man. And then you had some Nazis walking, and they would not say a thing. They would kick, you know, to kick around to see if I did not unscrew something with my plastic spoon. So when I would say, "Good morning, sir," they'll go, "Good morning." You know, and you, uh-oh, the enemy has walked in. So I would pray for them. Actually, every single day, believe it or not, when I had the church meetings and Bible studies, I would always pray for the villains. Amen. We prayed for the politicians, we prayed for the guards, and the guards were listening to those prayers because they were told by the administration to listen to everything I'm saying, including my conversations with the lawyer. One time some high-ranking officer walked in and started to yell at the regular officers. "I've told you you are to listen to everything he says. I've told you not to leave him. I've told you to follow wherever he goes." And he yells at this guy in front of the inmates. I'm thinking, I must be very important. Because not everything that comes out of my mouth is actually wise. By the way, I want to give you a promise. I'm not going to look like this forever, okay? I just left it for the visual effect. That's how I looked like when I was there, but I'm going to shave, so don't be scared. Next week, I shall look a little bit better. You know? So, I think the biggest pressure was for me to give up, and I was told that on multiple occasions. That the whole purpose of my treatment, which the inmates said they have never seen before, and some of them are career criminals that spent many years in correctional services, and they said they have never seen anyone being treated in such a weird way. And they wanted to break my spirit. They wanted to crush my will to fight. They wanted to destroy me so I would plead. You know, correctional services has one purpose? To plead. They want us to plead. Either we did something or not. When you plead, you're off that awful place. When you plead, you are taken to a general population, into a real prison, right? Drumheller or other place, and you can start rebuilding your life. Because somehow it will be, you know, a known thing. The worst thing that can happen to a human being is never knowing what is going to happen tomorrow. And that was my 50 years. I never knew what they're going to cook. I never knew what they're going to say. When they took me to that bigger, you know, iron box, I said, that's it, they're going to kill me here. If this is the treatment I'm going to be getting every day, I'm not going to survive this. And there was no reason for it. They have a body scanner if they want to see if I have any contraband. They don't have to strip me naked. They can take me to the body scanner and it reveals everything. But you see, no, they want you naked. They want you to be dehumanized. They want you to feel like you're nothing but a bug. You know what Premier Jason Kenney is calling us? Insects. We're bugs. We're cockroaches for him. We are no better than a mosquito. Have you heard his comment? You're a mosquito to our wonderful Premier. I said, well, let's suck all the blood that we can. And let's rebuild this country. Let's rebuild this whole thing with a solid foundation of justice, fairness, democracy. That when we elect people, they'll actually work for us, not for the global elites. That when we elect premier, he's going to fight to the death for the people that have elected him and not call those people insects or bugs or crazies. I like that. They wanted me to throw a towel. And I felt the pressure, the pressuring of the evil at every corner. They wanted me to say, I can't do this anymore. I'm ready to quit. I plead. During the time I was there, you know, the Crown Prosecutor made an offer. I don't know if my wife told you. The Crown Prosecutor said everything will go away. Just plead guilty and you can go home. See? That's the system. That's how they break you. They crush you. They do stuff to you. And then you plead just to get out of this pickle. Psychological warfare. Never knowing what is going to happen to you in the next few hours. Then verse 38 says, then he said to them, my soul is consumed with sorrow. That's from Matthew 26:39. To the point of death, that's where Jesus was being tested, just before his crucifixion. He told the people to stay and pray, but they were tired. They fall asleep. And he says to them, stay here and keep watch with me. Going a little further, Jesus fell face down and prayed, Father, my Father, if it is possible, let this cup pass from me. Yet not as I will, not my will, but thy will. Then Jesus returned to the disciples and found them sleeping. Were you not able to keep watch with me for 1 hour? Matthew 26:39. So I want to tell you that I was very grateful in those emails that you kept the vigil. You kept the prayers. You kept coming. I think this was the longest ongoing protest in a history of correctional services in this country. 44 days, every single day. I don't think they have ever seen something like this before. For Christ also suffered once for sins, the just and for the unjust, that he might bring us to God, being put to death in the flesh, but made alive by the Spirit, by whom also he went and preached to the spirits in prison. So he wanted me to be there to preach to those people in prison. You know, I've heard about the scripture, of course, and I preached about, hey, take care of the orphans and the widows, and feed the poor, and visit the prisoners. And I've done prison ministry in Drumheller. Every month we would go over there and minister. Of course, I was kicked out. I pretty much got kicked out from every prayer meeting because I was too radical. And I preached about everything, and the chaplain in Drumheller was so disgusted that I preached the whole Bible that he kicked me out, even though we had 800 inmates attending our church service. I had homosexuals coming to me in Drumheller, and they said, you know what, we disagree with you about this thing, but we love your sermon. And the chaplain was listening to that because, you see, no one attended his church services unless they wanted a chocolate bar. So that's the problem. He wanted me there so I can preach in prison. He had me there on the inside, and he had you on the outside. The demons were hammered from inside out, and then from outside in. Luke 4:18, the Spirit of the Lord is on me because he has anointed me to proclaim good news to the poor. He has sent me to proclaim freedom to the prisoners, to the captives, and recovery of sight for the blind, to set the oppressed free. He went and preached to the spirits in prison who formerly were disobedient, when once the divine long-suffering waited in the days of Noah, while the ark was being prepared, in which a few, that is 8, souls were saved through water. But still the Peter's part of the scripture, the one that fall from the Bible. Verse 21, there's also an antitype which now saves us, baptism. Not the removal of the filth of the flesh, but the answer of a good conscience toward God. Through the resurrection of Jesus Christ, who has gone into heaven and is at the right hand of God. Angels and authorities and powers having been made subject to him. So that's the first that fall from my Bible. Only one time, one thing, so I put it on the wall. And I look at it every day. 40 few days later, I had the whole unit attending the Bible study, church services. It was so amazing. And the enemy didn't like it. So one day I'm sitting there at the table and a guard comes in and says, Pulaski, you have a visitor. So, okay. And we knew. I felt this doesn't sound good. There's something fishy about this. So I was literally kidnapped from my unit. And when I went to see my visitors, they were already sheriffs waiting for me with shackles. So I was shackled to my feet and handcuffed again and transferred to first Red Deer and then from Red Deer to Edmonton. Stripped naked in front of other people just because. Why? Don't ask me, I don't know. I don't understand. Why you have to do this to another human being? Women, men, why?
Break you down.
Right? Just to break you, just to destroy your spirit, a will to fight. And then they were parading me and walking me to my unit, and they were laughing. It's about 10 guards and having a great time, because they already knew. I didn't know. I didn't know what awaits me. I was just taken from a nicely established place where I would be able to survive because of the church services and the prayers and the love that I was getting from the inmates. And some good guards. And I want to be fair. And I want to be fair on the record. There's some good guards there. Awesome guards. Good, born-again, spirit-filled lovers of people, lovers of God. And they would come to me privately and they would pray with me. And they would tell me what is happening. And they would say, the administration is telling me to do this to you. They are telling us to hurt you. But we're not going to do it. I'm not going to do it. I was taken to this unit and I knew there's something cooking because they had so much fun. And they said to the max spot. I'm thinking, my God, that sounds terrible. It's like Matrix. What they are going to do with me? And boom, they took me to the most secure place in Edmonton's Riemann Center. And there was no one there. It was like a freak show. Everything was iron and the whole unit was behind like a bulletproof, windows from top to bottom. Like, it was unbelievable. And I could not see even one soul there. And they took me to the 3rd floor. And if you know anything about the third floor, it's the worst of the worst for the most dangerous offenders. Murderers, those that do riots and attack guards. They put me there. It was so cold that the difference between the outside and inside, there was no difference. I was shivering all the time. They gave me only one blanket and no pillow, of course. Why? I don't know. So I'm shivering and I'm thinking, like, now I'm going to die here for sure. And I think I reached the lowest in this journey when they gave me a document from the administration in Edmonton's Riemann. And here is what the document said. I'm unsafe for the staff and the facility. And it was signed by the deputy director of Riemann Center in Edmonton. And it says I'm going to spend there 15 days to 45 days or indefinitely. And I'm thinking, how can you do that to another human being? I just had Bible study in the morning and now I am in hell again and I've done nothing wrong. Why am I in administrative segregation? That's how they call it. You see, they don't call it solitary confinement because solitary confinement is illegal. They call it administrative segregation, which is the same thing. But now they can get away with a murder. Unbelievable. Unbelievable. I don't have that much time, so I want to just, maybe next week I'll continue. I just want to tell you what solitary confinement or administrative segregation, whatever they want to call this. When you are alone in your cell for 22 hours or more, it's considered a torture. Solitary confinement is a form of imprisonment distinguished by living in single cells with little or no meaningful contact with other inmates. When I was there and I got this letter and I was allowed to come 30 minutes in the morning and 30 minutes in the afternoon, so 1 hour within 24-hour period of time. And the only thing I could do is call a lawyer, tell them, if you're not going to fight for me, it's over for me here. And call my wife to get some encouragement, take a shower, and that's it. And you are in a box like a dog again. Unbelievable. Unbelievable. When I said to the guard, it's freezing cold here, can you bring me an extra blanket because I'm going to get sick here? He says, at least you have fresh air. How do you fight that? What can you do? There's nothing you can do. They hold your life in the palm of their hands. And I think we talked about that with my wife. That's why God hates corruption. Because you see, they have your life in the palm of their hands and they can bless you. They can do their job or they can curse you and destroy you. That's why they're going to be judged double. Every leader, every person in leadership is going to be judged double. Double blessing if you do the right thing, or double curses if you are abusing your power. That's why it's so important to challenge the politicians, because they have been given power over our lives. The nurses, the doctors, the guards, they have power to destroy you, or they have the power to bless you, to keep you alive. But if they're corrupted, how you fight this? Only God can come to your defense. So this story came in a next day in a court. The lawyers decided strategically to tell the judge what's happening to me first. And I think that scared them. I think that scared the administration, because you see the story now is reaching the courts. The courts is public record. The world will know eventually what is happening to me. So the next day, because there's no human contact, everything is intercom. So they would say, hey, Pulaski, you're being transferred. I'm thinking, no, God, not again. What they're cooking this time? But they said, you're going to be transferred and you will have an inmate. So I said, at least another human being. I hope he's not going to murder me during the night hour. That's what goes through your head. You don't know. After 40 few days that I was told that the guards wanted to use the hands of the inmates to murder me and to beat me up, I don't know what's going to happen to me. Are they cooking something else? So they took me to another unit. And I'm telling you, as I walked in, I saw humans. And I was very glad. But when I entered the unit, I saw that those humans are peculiar. Because they were walking in a circle. You know, around and round and round, and someone would jump up and go to the ground. Someone, you can tell you're in a very peculiar place. So I turned to the guards and they said, sirs, where am I? And they said, in wild, wild west. This is asylum. They took me to the mental unit. So I'm thinking, my God, I guess you have a job for me to do with those people. So I went to the cell that they assigned me, and so I talked to the guy. I says, what you here for? And he says, well, I murdered my brother. And I said, my God, into thy hands I give my soul. This is crazy. This is crazy stuff. How did you kill him? With a machete. And I'm looking at the pens and the pencils, and I'm thinking like, my God, there is no machete, but the pencil can do as much damage. God, protect me through this insanity. So I prayed a lot, I have to admit. I did double shift. The good thing about this whole ordeal in the mental world was that they have apparently the most time out of their cells. and there are two TVs. And here's how you watch TV with those boys. It's very interesting. You sit there and you watch a movie, and it's a good movie. I'm thinking like, I'll survive, you know? Because time on the outside is your worst enemy, you know that? It goes so fast. But time on the inside is also your worst enemy. Because it drags like crazy. But there's nothing to do. You just, no wonder those people walk in a circle. Because they go nuts. If they came nuts, now they are double nuts. So time goes so crazy. So when I saw that there's actually TV and there are movies, time will go a lot faster. But here's how you watch a movie in a mental ward. So you watch 10 minutes and suddenly someone rises and jumps. It's like, and then goes and switches the channel. And it's a different movie. So I sat down, I'm like, okay, I'll just here observe what's happening. This is weird. But hey, it's a lot better than me alone in a single cell for 24 hours a day. And then another 10 minutes will pass, and it's a good movie, and you're watching another one, and you're kind of like, okay, let's see what happens. Boom, he jumps again and changes the channel. So that was the whole thing, 10 minutes. You could watch a movie. So normally, if he went through the channels, you could see about 20 minutes of each movie. So within an hour, you would see, few movies, a little portions of it, and the next day would be, again, hopefully, the movie would catch up when he switched the channel, so you had the continuation. And at first I was a little bit upset, and then I was just laughing. And we actually became very good friends. Martinez is his name. And I will never forget that guy, and I'll never forget, because he was always laying on the ground, and I will never forget him jumping like someone put a fire under him. On his feet, boom, changes the channel, lays down again. So I actually, later on, I looked for him. When he was not watching TV, it was not the same. Well then, I decided, okay, I talked to my wife, and she says, well, you have a job to do, so you better start praying for them, or God will not release you from that place. And that scared, she doesn't know, but that scared me like crazy. Because when I realized that God has a job over there, and I'm not fulfilling that job, I will be kept over there as long as I will actually do what He has me to do. So she scared me and said, okay, I gotta start doing what God called me to do. So, okay, I started laying hands on them and started to pray. And then, behold, I prayed for my roommate, of course, double prayer. And then I started to look for openings, Those walking around in the circle people, it was hard to catch up with them. They were so crazy fast, it was insane. So I would look for people that were a little bit calmer, and they would sit. So I would sit with them and introduce myself and talk a little bit. By the time I was transferred again, I had a full table of people listening to the Bible study and the church service. And on top of that, they were coming to me when they learned I'm a pastor and they saw my Bible studies. They would come to my cell for prayers. They would just come when they saw me sitting. I would say, hey, Pastor, can you just bless me this morning? Can you just bless me? So God shows up wherever you are. It was a dark place. It was a crazy place. But God wanted to touch them as well. I had a guard coming, and he's knocking at the door very early. Earlier than the wake-up call. So I kind of ignored him. He knocks again. I ignored him. He walks for the third time, and I'm thinking, my God, he's very persistent, this guy, so it must be something important. So I looked, yeah, it's, my underwear. Okay, it's a guard. He wants something from me because he says to come. I thought maybe a roommate will talk to him. So I come in, and through the door he says, listen, I had a dream about you. And I was supposed to work in my spot where I knew you are. So I would deliver that, what God told me to tell you. But in the morning, I was assigned to a different ward, different unit. And I said, oh my God, how am I going to deliver that word to this man? And behold, it turned out that he was assigned to the mental unit where I was transferred the same day. Can you imagine? So he says, I had a dream about you, and in a dream, God said to you, He loves you. You're an inspiration to so many people. Don't give up, don't quit. That God is there with you. And that meant so much, especially coming from a guard. And I had encounters like this. I had many encounters like this. That's why it would not be fair if I would paint them with the same brush. There's some really good people. One man, a Chinese man, comes in. He says, I want you to know we feel for you. What they're doing to you is not right. So anything I can do. So, you know, I am an opportunist. So I asked for a pillow. And he brought the pillow to me. And then I said, well, it's crazy cold here. Do you have some extra blankets? So he brought 2. So I had 4 blankets and a pillow. And for the first night, I was able in Edmonton to actually sleep without being awakened from cold. You know, solitary confinement. Strict measures to control contraband. Oh, I was the biggest contraband that they had there. I smuggled the Bible, the Word of God, and the prayer, and the Spirit of the living God there, everywhere I went. And the use of additional security measures and equipment. It is specifically designed for disruptive inmates who are security risks, just like they said to me with that letter. To other inmates, the prison staff, or the prison itself. But can also be used as a form of disciplinary punishment. The United Nations considers solitary confinement exceeding 15 days to be torture. I was there over 30 days and then plus in Edmonton. Why? Because God has created us in a certain way. Like sheep, we have the herd mentality. When you break God's design, when you break God's design, you will mess every single time. That is why when you go against what He has created, the way He created things, when you go and sin, you die. We were never meant to be alone. That's why it's so important to have a family. That's why it's so evil what they've done with the mandates. So evil what they've done with the restrictions and telling us we cannot see our loved ones, we cannot go to hospitals, we cannot, you know, say farewells. That's how evil it is, because you see, God never created us in such a way. We are always created to be together. That's why He calls us sheep, not just because we're so stupid, which we are, but because sheep loves to be together. So evil to force people into those mandates. It's from the pit of hell. Stay home, do not visit anyone, do not see anyone, wear the muzzle. The practice of solitary confinement traces its origins, you know, the modern history, to 19th century. In Pennsylvania, they used this method as substitution for public punishments. Research surrounding the possible psychological and psychological effects of solitary confinement dates back to 1830s. When the new prison, discipline of separate confinement, was introduced at the Eastern State Penitentiary in Philadelphia in 1829, commentators attributed the high rates of mental breakdown to the system of isolating prisoners in their cells. Charles Dickens, who visited the Philadelphia Penitentiary during his travels to America, described the slow and daily tampering with the mysteries of the brain to be immeasurably worse than any torture of the body. I witnessed that with my own eyes. I witnessed a man going nuts. I saw a man that came out, they released him from his cell, just like me, and he would run in a circle, back and forth, just running, walking, like you could not communicate with him. He lost his mind for that moment. His eyes were crazy. When you look at this guy, like, oh my God, he's nuts. You can tell. I saw him staring at one dot on the wall for hours. Day after day after day. He would not move. He would just sit in the same place and just stare like this. Like completely out of this world, you know, like he was not there. He was there, His physical body was there, but he was not there. That's what it does to humans. People that are treated in this way, for example, in Denmark, prison records from the Denmark Institute in 1870 to 1920 indicate that staff noticed inmates were exhibiting signs of mental illness while in isolation. So don't tell me this is helping. Don't tell me that this is for our own good, this is a benefit. This is to hurt people. They're hurting people. And they are using your money to keep hurting people, and there is nothing we can do about it. It's unbelievable. Revealing that the persistent problem has been around for decades. The lack of human contact and the sensory deprivation that often go with solitary confinement can have a severe negative impact on prisoners' mental state that may lead to certain mental illness, such as depression, permanent or semi-permanent changes to brain psychology. Solitary confinement, or whatever you want to call it. Keeping someone in a cell because there was a dispute that the director said, no, Pawlowski's not in solitary confinement, you know, he's in segregation. Yeah. Whatever, dude, you bloody liar. Whatever you want to call it, you're still wicked and you're still doing the same thing. I was alone in a single cell, kept for 25 hours at times, non-stop in that cell. Solitary confinement has been reported to cause headaches, hypertension, migraines, profuse sweating, dizziness, heart palpitations. Many of these symptoms are due to the intense anxiety, sensory deprivation. Inmates can also experience neck and back pain and muscle stiffness due to long periods of little to no physical activity. These symptoms often worsen with repeated visits to solitary confinement. So I don't care if they let you out for one day, if they lock you back in solitary confinement, it's not helping you. You're back in the same state. Actually, it's worse because you just got a little bit of freedom. You tasted a little bit of, wow, I will survive this, and boom. And that's what they did this to me over and over. When they saw I was achieving something and the whole unit was cheering me up and attending the Bible study, they didn't like that. No. And one more thing I want to tell you. Correctional services are the biggest drug pushers I've ever seen in my entire life. Every single day they would come to my cell asking how I'm feeling. And when I told them, why am I in solitary confinement, they would slam the door. So later on, they stopped even asking how I'm feeling, because they were not interested in how I'm feeling. They were interested in if I need drugs. They offered me cocaine, other name. They offered me fentanyl. They offered me all kinds of drugs that I never knew existed, but they have fancy other names. And every single day, 3 times a day, a nurse would come with a little table with drugs. Would you like this? Would you like that? I didn't know anything about that stuff, so I educated myself. I asked the inmates, I said, please tell me, what is this drug for? Well, it's fentanyl, but different name for it. It's cocaine. I've seen them snorting cocaine, inmates. I've seen them selling drugs, buying drugs. Right there. I mean, you're talking about contraband, you're talking about, hey, keeping Artur Pawlowski. They would not give me a pen because they said that's, I'm dangerous and that's prohibited item for me. Yeah, but I could buy drugs, no problem. And I could sell drugs, no problem. They were offered to me. In Edmonton and in Calgary. So I started to observe. I started to see what's really going on. And here's what I found out. Every single day, the government of Alberta is pushing drugs on the inmates. They want them to be drugged. They want them to be just wasted. So what I was doing, I was interfering with the biggest drug operation I've ever seen in my life. That's why they hated me. That's why they took me to Edmonton, because you see, my roommates, although I didn't have a roommate in Calgary, but my inmates, friends in the unit, they stopped taking drugs. They refused to take drugs. See, there is always, listen up, camera. We have to understand There is a famous Polish saying, and I said that many times, if you do not know what the whole thing is all about, it's all about money. I started to interfere with a business in Calgary Women's Center. And sometimes, you know, I don't know how much they're getting for pushing the drugs. I don't know what's going on at the administrative level, but I'm telling you, this is what I saw. I saw them dealing drugs, selling, buying, swapping, all kinds of different things, and every single day, 3 times a day, the guards with the nurse would come and offer you drugs. And you could take them and resell them. That's good, that's okay, that's perfectly kosher. So don't tell me this whole thing is to correct anything. They're making drug addicts out of those people. And if I was weaker, if I didn't have my God with me, I would turn into drugs. I would not be able to cope with the amount of pressure and evil and abuse of power. I would prefer to take a drug and forget about everything. You know, after drugs, people would yell and scream and all kinds of different things will happen. So I'll pray with them and I'll tell them, hey, don't do that. Don't take it. That's what brought you here in the first place, right? But there's nothing done with those kids. There's nothing done with those men. They're left in the middle of hell. And the only thing is being done to them is, hey, take drugs. Just take drugs. Just take another pill. See, another pill will fix your life. And they are reoffending again. It's a revolving door. Yeah. They will be released upon society. And what kind of men we're going to have next door? Druggies. People that the only thing they talk about is their lifestyle that brought them in that place in the first place. So I was a light in the darkness. I was showing them that, hey, you can come out and you can start a business. You can work hard. You can achieve something. You see, it's easy to go and sell drugs. The boys told me they make $1,000 a day. It's hard to match that when you're working for McDonald's, right? So they told me so many times, Art, when we're going to be released, what is awaiting for us? How can I support? You know, no one will hire an ex-convict. That's why they wanted so much for me to plead guilty so I can have a criminal record. See, this whole thing is all about that. Crashing, breaking, so I can have a record. You know how many times in the court it came out that I have a clear criminal record? I'm not a criminal. And the last thing, well, I'll finish next week, you know, before I'm arrested again. So, here is how they let me out, which is quite fascinating. I think they were so sick and tired of me, and they were so sick and tired of you outside. The high-ranking officer comes to me and says, Art, we don't want you to come back here. I said, you don't love me anymore? You don't love me anymore? He says, no, we love you, but we don't want you here. And this is what he said. Some guards were, when I was being escorted out by high-ranking officers, like with 3-something, and a number of them, and then some guards were yelling, Art, good luck. Stay strong. So there's some good people there. There are some good guards, and this high-ranking officer, when he was escorting me, here's what he said. He says, Art, this is not the place for you. This is a place for real criminals, not for you. You know, like little things like this that showed me that it's not all rotten. It's not all lost. We just have to replace those directors from the pit of hell with some good folks. Folks that will treat this facility as a correctional services, not as a business. Because this was never to be a private business, which remand centers are private businesses, you know that, right? It's a private business. It's a money-making machine. They want the inmates inside because every inmate is plus so many dollars. Don't kid yourself. It's all about money. It's all about money. The more drugs they push, the more money they get from the government. It's all about business.